You live in a time where modern gaming sucks so bad that many companies are going back and recreating old titles that will actually sell. The point of a video game remake is to reimagine the same game that people loved all those years prior, and to deliver a new product that captures the spirit of the old game. The Crash Bandicoot and Spyro remakes as of late have done very well because they were sensationalized games that defined many childhoods. But these games weren't just successful because they were adored back in their prime, they're special because they're so well made even all these years later. Yes, Crash still has some cheap moments, and I've heard a handful of people with minor gripes towards Spyro Reignited, but there's no denying that these games nearly flawlessly capture the spirit of their originals. Not much has changed as far as gameplay and level design, but more so in the textures and assets. These games are rebuilt from the ground up to play very similarly to their previous iterations, but to look entirely modern with the same spirit. These games are as vibrant as they were over 2 decades ago. They still capture the same mood and have made many old school fans around the world very happy. But then Capcom jumps in and says, no, that shit is dumb. Resident Evil 1 Remake for the GameCube is still regarded as one of the best Resident Evil games, and even one of the best video games ever made. This is how you do a remake properly. But then, Capcom jumps in again and says, no, that shit isn't good enough. We can do better. And then they announced Resident Evil 2 and caught the attention of many gamers. Resident Evil 2 Remake is hands down the best Resident Evil remake. This game shows how Capcom can painstakingly recreate the same game from 1998, but throw twists and turns here and there. And the biggest twist is obviously the perspective change. Instead of forced viewpoints like in the original RE2, this game plays more like the modern games with a third-person, over-the-shoulder point of view. This freedom to look around and take in the sights is a fantastic new addition to the game. Now you can see every nook and cranny of this police station and soak in all the detail. And what detail this game is filled with. I remember thinking it was cool to hear Leon say bits of dialogue as reactions while shooting at zombies.
Shit! Fuck off!
Then I realized that when Leon is holding his flashlight and needs to reload, he'll actually tuck it in his chin. This is detail you can see if you keep your eyes peeled. And tucking a flashlight in one's chin might not seem like a big deal, but you know for a fact that if this game was being made by most other game studios, Leon's flashlight would probably just disappear in thin air while he reloaded. The gameplay is pretty tight with some wonderful controls. Aiming feels good on a gamepad as well as a mouse, and traversing the multiple settings leaves a lurking feeling in your soul. Enemies are unpredictable but easy to maneuver around with a bit of strategy and luck. A fair amount of supplies need to be juggled and used efficiently so that you don't run out of them, and this leads to players coming up with new strategies to take on the undead. But for some reason, the face munchers in this game can take anywhere between 3 to probably around 70 headshots before they can die. They can fall down and fake their death for a few moments until you walk over and spring them into action. Zombies in this game can be deceiving and powerful, so sometimes trying to kill them all isn't in your best interest. Instead of doing headshots to kill them, try shooting the knees out to cripple the zombies. It'll still linger around on the ground, but it'll be much less of a threat and much less of a burden. Lickers, on the other hand, can soak up a lot of damage, just like a sponge can soak up a lot of warm pee. Instead of taking them head on, players can walk around them quietly and not disturb them. Of course, when you start mixing other enemy types with the lickers, you don't get such good results. And actually, that leads me to my next talking point, the X Factor of Resident Evil 2. If you're anything like me, then horror games will make you cry like a bitch. I can't stand horror games because they make me empathize with my character and imagine myself in their situation. This makes chases and spooky sounds very chilling for me. So I'm sure many of you can imagine which part of this game was the moment that I quit and did not want to continue.
Hey, I'll make you a deal. Unlock this cell and I'll give you this. There's no other way out of that parking garage, believe me.
Sorry, I can't do that. I have to talk to the chief first.
Look, we're both prisoners in this station. So either we play nice and help each other out, or... Shit. It's coming.
What? What's coming?
Come on. Come on, don't be an asshole. Okay, you need this. Just get me the fuck out of here!
Oh my god.
Jesus Christ!
This trench coat, fedora wearing piece of shit is one of the greatest things to come out of this game. The way Mr. X relentlessly hunts you through the corridors can put panic into even the most seasoned of Resident Evil players. I know that many discussions have come up of Mr. X's abundant inclusion being controversial, that he becomes more of a frustration than a scare in the later parts of the game, and yes, that can be true, and perhaps his role should have been a bit smaller, and maybe even just on the B scenarios for our characters, but nonetheless, he is a very crucial part of Resident Evil 2 Remake. In fact, I'd say that he's the star of the show. You can hear his lumbering footsteps in adjacent rooms, down narrow hallways, or even on the floors above you. This fills players with a sense of dread that this non-killable, devastating enemy is patrolling the halls for you. Of course, there are ways to get around him, as many rooms are designed with Mr. X's pursuit in mind. Most rooms have objects in the middle that can be used to lure Mr. X in a loop, while many rooms are also made with 2 exits. On top of that, Mr. X can also be stunned with a few headshots, just long enough for you to scutter by, and even damaged enough that he can be brought down to his knees for a few seconds. He's not able to enter safe rooms except for the main hall in the police station, and he can't enter other specific regions of the map, so there are plenty of ways to deal with him, but he's always a looming threat. The areas themselves are a treat. The police station becomes a maze of corridors and offices that loop back to the main hall in several ways. It becomes a location that you navigate so often, you know the layout like the back of your hand. Then, that's when Capcom throws Mr. X at you to throw you off your tracks. Everything you've learned about traversing the environment up to this point has become crucial information that can help you avoid the tyrant while solving puzzles. The pacing is so well done, albeit not perfect, that I can't help but applaud Capcom. But then, there are the boss fights. And they are no good. Resident Evil has had its fair share of good and bad boss fights. They're always a welcome treat, but these ones overstate their welcome just a little bit. It's not a big complaint, as many of these boss fights are serviceable, but they could have been much better. They all involve the same strategies of run, turn, shoot. Run, turn, shoot. Run, turn, shoot. Run. The new take on these characters is an interesting one. On one hand, I like that characters like Marvin and Chief Irons are a little more fleshed out, even if the Chief does become a stereotypical bad guy. On the other hand, Leon and Claire are just way too casual about the end of the world.
You know, just surviving.
That's good.
All in all, Resident Evil 2 is going down as one of the best video game remakes ever, and definitely a contender for Game of the Year. It took the atmosphere you thought you were experiencing in the original, and then throws you face first into it. Resident Evil 2 Remake is a marvelous achievement for the series, and a fantastic staple for the horror game genre as a whole. These remakes are special to fans of this series because we know that it's when Capcom puts in their best effort to release a polished, updated version of the games that we still love. It's obvious that Capcom treats its Resident Evil remakes with a lot of care, because they know what these games did for their company. They know that gamers cherish this franchise and expect a lot out of it. And as the grandfather of horror games, the Resident Evil name holds so much weight. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And as for you, Capcom, Resident Evil 2 Remake is kick-ass. I'm excited to see what you guys do with not just future remakes of the games, but the future of the franchise as a whole.
Again.